Millionaire marries an obese woman to win a bet but ends up begging for her love. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. It all began on a stormy Friday night in downtown Chicago. The city lights blurred behind streaks of rain as luxury cars pulled up to the entrance of the Meridian Club, a private lounge where wealth whispered louder than laughter. Inside, expensive cologne and ego mixed in the air like smoke. Aiden Cole leaned back in his leather chair, a glass of scotch in his hand, and an arrogance that filled the room. He was 32, a self-made millionaire who turned tech startups into gold. Everything about him screamed control: his crisp gray suit, his watch worth more than most cars, and that sharp calculating gaze. Around him sat 3 other men, all in tailored suits, all drunk on money and competition. "Come on, Aiden," one of them said, grinning as he poured another drink. "You have everything, money, cars, houses, but no one has ever seen you lose a bet." Aiden smirked. "Because I do not lose." "Then prove it," another chimed in, leaning forward. "Prove you can make any woman fall for you. Even someone impossible." The room fell quiet for a moment before the third man, Miles, nodded toward the corner of the lounge. "How about her?" Aiden turned his head. Behind the bar, wiping down glasses, was a woman in a plain uniform. Her name tag read Clara. She was not the type of woman who turned heads in this kind of place. Short, soft-bodied, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the kitchen, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked tired, maybe mid-20s, but her eyes were kind, the kind that smiled even when her lips did not. Aiden let out a quiet laugh. "You want me to marry a waitress, not just marry Miles," said, grinning wider. "You have to make her fall for you, and you have 30 days to do it. If you win, we donate $1 million to your new company. If you fail, you hand over your penthouse." The challenge hit like a spark on gasoline. The arrogance in Aiden's chest flared. He looked back at Clara, who was struggling to balance a tray full of glasses while a group of rich guests ignored her completely. Something about her simplicity amused him. "Fine," he said, finally swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I will do it." "You will marry her?" Miles asked, half laughing. Aiden stood, setting his drink down. "Yes. Watch me." As the men burst into laughter, Aiden buttoned his jacket and walked toward the bar. Clara glanced up, startled, as the tall man in the tailored suit stopped in front of her. "Excuse me," he said smoothly, his voice low, deliberate. "Can I get your name?" She blinked, unsure. "Clara. Clara Mitchell." "Would you like a drink, sir?" Aiden smiled, the kind that could sell lies as easily as dreams. "Actually, Clara, I would like something else." She frowned, slightly unsure if he was serious. "And what would that be?" He leaned in just enough for her to catch the scent of scotch and confidence. "I want you to marry me." The glass in her hand nearly slipped. "I am sorry, what?" The room seemed to freeze. Even the bartender nearby paused mid-pour. Aiden's tone did not waver. "I am serious. A marriage arrangement. It would not be forever. You help me, I help you. Think of it as a business deal." Clara's pulse raced. For a second she thought it was a cruel joke. Another rich man's game. She had been working double shifts to keep her mother's old nutrition center from closing, and here was this stranger offering something absurd wrapped in luxury. She shook her head, half laughing in disbelief. "You do not even know me." "Not yet," he replied. "But I will." He placed a business card on the counter, the name Aiden Cole, CEO Cole Ventures, embossed in silver. "Meet me tomorrow at noon. Same place, if you are curious." And just like that, he walked away, leaving Clara standing behind the bar, staring at the card as thunder rolled over the city. That night, as she rode the bus home through the rain, she looked out the window, clutching her purse tight. Part of her wanted to throw the card away, but another part, the part that still believed miracles sometimes wore strange faces, whispered, "What if this is the only way to save Mom's center?" Across the city, Aiden stood by the window of his penthouse, lightning reflecting off the skyline. The bet had begun. But deep down somewhere beneath the arrogance and ambition, something unsettled him, a feeling he could not name yet. The next morning the rain had stopped leaving, the city washed clean but cold. Clara stood in front of the mirror inside her small apartment, staring at her reflection as if searching for an answer. The business card lay on the table beside a half-finished cup of coffee. Aiden Cole, CEO, Cole Ventures. She had Googled his name the night before. The results were endless articles about his success, his luxury penthouse, his charity events, and his reputation for arrogance. She whispered to herself, "What am I doing?" The clock read 1115 a.m. If she left now, she would arrive at the Meridian Club right on time. She told herself she was only going to listen, nothing more. But in her heart, she already knew curiosity had won. When she arrived, the lounge was almost empty. Aiden was already there, dressed in another perfect suit, sipping espresso as if he had been expecting her all along. "Clara," he said, standing as she approached. "I was not sure you would come." "I almost did not," she admitted, clutching her purse strap. "But I guess I needed to know why someone like you would say something so insane." He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Sit down, please. Let me explain." She sat still, guarded. Aiden folded his hands. "I am offering a deal. I need a temporary wife for a public image project. It will last 1 month, 30 days. In return, you will receive $200,000, enough, I believe, to save your mother's center." Clara's breath caught. "How do you know about that?" "I do my research," he replied simply. "You run the numbers every night trying to keep it alive. You are behind on rent, and the property is scheduled for repossession in 6 weeks. Her heart pounded. It felt intrusive, almost cruel, that this man knew the details of her struggle. "So what, you think you can buy me?" Aiden leaned forward. "No, I am offering a business agreement. No strings, no emotions, no expectations. You will attend events as my wife, wear what the stylist provides, smile for cameras, and help me appear more human." The word lingered in the air like smoke. Clara looked down at her hands. "And when the 30 days are over, we sign annulment papers. You walk away free with enough money to rebuild whatever you wish." Silence stretched between them. The ticking clock sounded louder than ever. "This is insane," she said softly. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes insanity pays the bills." She gave a shaky laugh, but her mind was spinning. $200,000. The nutrition center could survive for another year, maybe longer. The women who came there for help would not lose their safe space. But to marry a man she barely knew for money, that crossed every line she had promised herself she would never cross. Still, desperation has a quiet way of changing what we call impossible. Clara looked up, meeting his eyes. "What are the rules?" Aiden opened a sleek folder and slid a thin document toward her. "3 conditions," he said. "First, no real emotions involved. This is business, not romance. Second, you must keep the arrangement confidential. No press leaks, no family interviews. Third, once the 30 days end, you disappear from my life completely." "Agreed." Clara picked up the pen, staring at the black ink. "What happens if I break the rules?" "You will lose everything," he said plainly. She hesitated for a long moment. Outside the tall windows, the sun tried to push through the clouds, a weak glow over the city. She thought of her mother's framed photograph that hung on the center's wall, and the handwritten words beneath it, "Kindness never goes out of style." Taking a deep breath, she signed her name. Aiden watched her hand move, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he closed the folder gently, almost ceremoniously, and extended his hand. "Welcome to the deal, Mrs. Cole." The words landed heavy in her chest. He stood and called for his driver. "I will send the stylist to your apartment this evening. You have an event tomorrow night. Try to rest." She stood too, her voice quiet. "Do people usually say yes that easily to you?" Aiden looked at her for a moment before answering. "No. You are the first." He left her standing there, clutching her purse, the signed contract still warm with fresh ink. That evening, as she sat on her bed, the city glowing outside her window, she traced the edge of her mother's photo frame with her thumb. "Mom," she whispered, "I hope you would understand." Across town, Aiden looked out from his penthouse balcony, the skyline stretching before him. He had won the bet, at least for now. But as he poured himself another drink, he could not explain the strange weight in his chest, a feeling that this time he might have started something he could not control. The following day came faster than Clara expected. She woke to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. A message glowed across the screen: "Driver will arrive at 9 a.m. AC." By the time she stepped outside, a black SUV waited by the curb, The driver opened the door without a word and she climbed in, clutching her old canvas tote like a shield. The city blurred past the window-gray buildings, billboards, and the faint reflection of a woman who could hardly believe what she had done. They stopped in front of a sleek high-rise downtown. The name Cole Tower shimmered in silver letters above the glass doors. Inside, everything smelled of money, fresh flowers, polished marble, quiet power. A woman in a beige suit approached, smiling professionally. "Mrs. Cole, I am Natalie, Mr. Cole's assistant. We have a few things to go over before your first public appearance." Clara followed her through a long corridor into an office filled with sunlight and glass. Aiden was there, standing by the window, his jacket draped perfectly over his shoulders. He turned when they entered. "You are on time," he said. "I try to be," she replied, unsure where to put her hands. He gestured toward the folder on his desk. "Here are the details for tonight's charity gala. You will accompany me as my wife. You do not have to speak to anyone unless I ask you to. If anyone asks how we met, the story is simple. We met at a fundraiser last year and married quietly. Keep it short and believable." Clara nodded slowly. "Anything else I should know?" He looked her over, not cruelly but analytically. "Natalie will handle your wardrobe. She will also teach you the basics: how to stand, how to smile for photographs, how to make people believe we belong together." The words stung more than she expected. Make people believe. For the next several hours, Clara was ushered through a dizzying routine. Dresses were measured fabrics, pinned hair styled, and makeup applied by strangers who spoke to her like a mannequin. Every mirror reflected someone she barely recognized. When she was finally shown the gown, an emerald dress that shimmered like water, Clara hesitated. "It is beautiful," she whispered, touching the fabric. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows of Aiden's penthouse, glinting off the glass walls and stainless steel fixtures. Clara stood awkwardly in the living room, holding a mug of untouched coffee. The night before still echoed in her mind, the whispers, the laughter, and the way Aiden had stepped in to defend her. It had been humiliating and strangely touching all at once. Aiden walked in, tie already in place, phone pressed to his ear. His tone was sharp, all business. "Tell the board we are not moving the launch date," he said before ending the call. When he noticed Clara, his voice softened slightly. "You handled yourself well last night." Clara shrugged. "I was not sure if I should thank you or be embarrassed." "Do not thank me," he said. "It was necessary." He picked up a folder from the table and handed it to her. "These are the next events on the schedule. You will be accompanying me to 3 in the next 2 weeks. There is a charity auction, a company dinner, and a weekend retreat. My driver will take you wherever you need to go for fittings." Clara opened the folder. Her name was printed neatly beside his on every invitation. "You plan everything, do you not? It keeps things under control," he replied. She looked around the penthouse, everything cold, perfect, untouched. "Do you ever get tired of control?" He paused, almost amused. "Not really. It is the reason I am where I am." Their eyes met, and for a moment the silence between them felt heavier than the glass walls around them. Then his phone buzzed again, and the spell broke. Later that day, Natalie arrived to prepare Clara for her next appearance. This time the lesson was more intense. She learned which fork to use at formal dinners, how to keep her posture during interviews, and even how to smile for photographs without showing too much emotion. During a break, Clara leaned against the counter, laughing quietly. "I feel like I am in finishing school." Natalie smiled. "You are doing well. Mr. Cole notices more than he says." That evening, as they prepared for the company dinner, Clara wore a navy blue gown that fit perfectly. She could hardly recognize herself in the mirror. When Aiden entered the room, he stopped mid-step. "You look different," he said after a pause. "Good different or bad different?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Good." At the dinner, Aiden introduced her to board members, investors, and partners. Every handshake felt like a performance. Clara followed the script, smiling, listening, playing her part flawlessly. But when she accidentally knocked over a glass of water during a toast, a ripple of laughter spread through the table. She flushed red, ready to apologize, but Aiden lifted his glass instead. "To authenticity," he said, smiling faintly. "Something we all could use a little more of." The tension broke. People laughed with him, not at her. Clara exhaled, heart pounding, and met his eyes across the table. For the first time, there was warmth there. After the dinner, they returned to the car in silence. City lights shimmered across the windshield as Aiden loosened his tie. "You surprised me tonight," he said quietly. "How so? You handled embarrassment better than most executives I know." She smiled. "When you have worked in customer service long enough, you learn to laugh before others do." He chuckled softly, the sound low and real. "I suppose I could learn something from that." The car rolled through the quiet streets, headlights slicing the dark. Neither of them spoke again, but something unspoken filled the air, a fragile thread of understanding that neither dared to name yet. For the first time since their contract began, Aiden Cole stopped thinking about the bet, and Clara Mitchell started wondering what it would feel like if any of this were real. A week later, the night of the charity auction arrived. The event was being held at the historic Grand Bellevue Hotel, a place that shimmered with chandeliers and polished marble floors. Cameras flashed as luxury cars lined the entrance, one of them carrying Aiden and Clara. Inside the ballroom, golden light washed over everything. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, and the soft hum of classical music filled the air. Aiden stood beside Clara, his hand resting lightly at her back for the photographers. He leaned close enough for her to hear him over the music. "Remember, just smile and stay by my side." Clara nodded, her palms slightly damp. "I will try not to ruin your perfect reputation tonight." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You could not if you tried." As the night unfolded, guests approached Aiden one after another, congratulating him on his latest venture. Every now and then someone's eyes would flicker toward Clara, curious and judging. She could feel it, but she stood tall, remembering Natalie's words. Kindness has its own gravity. Halfway through the auction, a large painting was rolled onto the stage, an abstract cityscape shimmering in silver and blue. The host's voice rang out. "This piece is titled Unmasked, donated by the Cole Foundation. The proceeds will go toward rebuilding community centers across Chicago." Clara turned to Aiden in surprise. "You never told me you supported centers like that." He shrugged lightly. "It is good for public image." But when she caught the flicker in his eyes, she wondered if there was more to it. Moments later, Victoria, the same woman who had mocked Clara at the first gala, approached their table holding a champagne flute. "Aiden," she purred, "I must say your wife looks more polished this time. You really can turn anything into a project, can you not?" The words were sharp and sugary at once. Clara's stomach tightened. She opened her mouth to respond, but Aiden spoke first. "Careful, Victoria," he said smoothly, his expression calm but his tone edged with steel. "Every project I invest in becomes something remarkable, Clara included." The woman's smirk faltered. She laughed nervously and excused herself, leaving a trail of awkward silence behind her. Clara looked at him, stunned. "You did not have to defend me again." Aiden met her gaze. "I wanted to." Before she could say anything more, the host called Aiden to the stage to present a donation. He buttoned his jacket and leaned toward her. "Wait for me. I will not be long." She watched him walk to the podium, confident and composed. The spotlight caught his features, and for a moment she saw not the arrogant man who had made a cruel bet, but someone else, someone capable of compassion. When he finished his speech, the room applauded. He stepped down and returned to her side, a slight weariness in his eyes. "How did I do?" "You did fine," she said softly. "Almost like you meant it." His laugh was quiet, genuine. "Maybe I did." As the night wound down, Clara found herself relaxing for the first time. She laughed at small jokes, danced once with Aiden beneath the golden lights, and almost forgot that everything between them was a lie written in ink. Later in the car ride home, the city glittered outside the window. Aiden leaned back, his voice low. "You handled yourself perfectly tonight. Do you ever stop being Mr. Cole's CEO?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Not often. But with you maybe I could." For a long moment neither of them spoke. The contract still hung between them, invisible yet unbroken, but something warmer began to take its place, something neither of them could admit aloud. As the car disappeared into the quiet streets, the bet that had started it all was slowly becoming something Aiden Cole could no longer control or walk away from. 2 weeks later, the weekend retreat arrived. It was held at a private coastal villa owned by one of Aiden's investors, a place surrounded by cliffs, ocean wind, and the smell of salt. Clara had never seen anything like it. The sea stretched endlessly beyond the balcony sunlight, glittering off the waves. For the first time since their contract began, the world felt still. Aiden stood near the terrace railing, phone in hand, the breeze tugging at his hair. I told you to delay the meeting, he said sharply. I am not negotiating anything until Monday. Then he hung up, exhaling hard. When he turned, he found Clara watching him from the doorway. You never stop working, do you? She asked gently. Someone has to keep this empire from collapsing, he replied, half smiling. Clara stepped out onto the terrace beside him. The wind caught the edge of her white sundress. Empires can survive one weekend, she said. You could try to enjoy it. He glanced at her, ready to reply with another deflection, but something in her calm expression disarmed him. You really think I do not know how to relax? I think you forgot how, she said softly. For a long moment they stood in silence, the crash of waves filling the air. Then Aiden's tone softened. When I was a kid, my father told me emotion was a liability. He said love makes men weak. I believed him. Clara looked at him, her eyes steady. Maybe that is why you built walls so high no one can reach you. He let out a quiet laugh, the kind that sounded almost painful. And yet somehow you are standing here. That night the retreat hosted a bonfire by the beach. Guests mingled, drinks in hand, the sound of music drifting across the shore. Aiden and Clara sat apart from the crowd, shoes off feet, buried in cool sand. I never imagined I would end up here, she said, looking at the stars. Neither did I, he admitted. She turned to him, curiosity softening her voice. Then why did you really make that offer to me, Aiden? I know there was more than just a business image. He hesitated, staring into the flames. At first it was about control, about proving something. Then it became a bet. I thought it would be easy to win. He paused, voice lower. But I stopped keeping score a long time ago. Clara's chest tightened. A bet, he blinked, realizing what he had let slip. It is complicated, he said quickly. I will explain later. But she did not press him. Instead, she looked back toward the fire, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope whatever game you started, it is not the one we are playing now. He turned to her, about to speak, but the words would not come. Later, back inside the villa, Clara stood by the window watching the reflection of moonlight on the ocean. She thought about the man behind her, the man who could be charming, cold, and kind all at once. The man who, for all his power, seemed lonelier than anyone she had ever met. Aiden approached quietly, stopping a few feet away. Clara, he said. She turned. Yes, he searched her face for something understanding, maybe forgiveness, but only said, thank you, for staying. Her voice was steady. For now. He nodded slowly, accepting it. As the waves crashed against the rocks below, Aiden Cole realized for the first time that the woman he had married for a bet was no longer part of a game. She was becoming the one thing he could not afford to lose. The calm of the retreat did not last. By the time Aiden and Clara returned to Chicago, a storm was waiting for them, one made of headlines, gossip, and betrayal. It began with a single article that spread across every news site: CEO Aiden Cole's marriage revealed as part of a $1 million bet. Clara stood frozen in the kitchen of the penthouse, her phone trembling in her hand as she read the words again and again. There was no mistake. The article quoted one of Aiden's so-called friends, Miles, bragging at a private event that Aiden had married a random waitress to win a cruel wager. There was even a photo of Aiden and Clara at the gala, smiling under the lights now twisted into evidence of deceit. When Aiden walked in, still on his phone, she turned toward him, her face pale. Is it true? She asked quietly. He stopped mid-step. Clara, do not say my name like that, she interrupted, her voice shaking. Just tell me the truth. He tried to explain, words tumbling out fast. It started as a bet, yes, but it changed. You have to believe me, it was never about humiliating you. She laughed, the sound sharp and broken. Never about humiliating me. You used me, Aiden. You made a joke out of my life. It was wrong, he said, stepping closer. I know that. I was arrogant, stupid. She moved back, eyes wet. You think sorry fixes this. You think money fixes this. He reached out, but she pulled away. Clara, please, do not, she whispered. Do not touch me. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Finally, she took off the diamond ring he had given her, placing it on the counter between them. The metal clinked softly against the marble. You can keep your contract, she said. You have already won, Clara. But she was already walking toward the door, her voice trembling. The only thing you ever lost was the chance to be honest. The door closed behind her, leaving Aiden standing in the quiet apartment, the city lights flickering through the glass like accusations. By morning, the story had gone viral. Investors were furious, reporters camped outside his building, and the company's stock began to fall. For the first time, Aiden Cole's empire was cracking. He ignored the calls, the messages, everything, except the memory of the look in Clara's eyes when she left. It was not anger that haunted him most. It was disappointment. Days passed. The penthouse felt colder, emptier. The contract that once promised control now lay torn on his desk. Aiden sat in the silence, realizing that every victory he had ever chased meant nothing compared to the one person he had just driven away. And for the first time in his life, the man who had never lost a bet finally understood what it meant to lose everything that truly mattered. 2 months later, winter settled over Chicago like a quiet punishment. The newspapers had moved on, the cameras had disappeared, but Aiden Cole was still living with the echo of his own mistakes. His company was recovering slowly, but he felt hollow. Every meeting, every success, every handshake meant nothing without the warmth of the woman who had once stood beside him. He had tried calling Clara, writing letters, even visiting the old address she used to rent. She was gone. The only trace he found was an online article about the reopening of a small nutrition center on the South Side. It carried a photo of Clara standing among volunteers, smiling as she handed out boxes of food. The caption read, "Mitchell Community Center rebuilt after generous anonymous donation." He knew who the donor was. He had made that donation quietly through an untraceable account. It was the least he could do, but doing good from a distance was no longer enough. That morning, Aiden stood outside the same building, his breath visible in the cold air. Through the frosted glass he saw her, her hair tucked back, sleeves rolled up, helping an elderly woman carry groceries. She looked peaceful. He almost turned away, afraid to ruin that peace. Then he remembered her words, "You already won." He whispered to himself, "Not yet." When he stepped inside, heads turned. The volunteers recognized him instantly from the scandal whispers rippling across the room. Clara looked up, her smile fading the moment their eyes met. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm but distant. "I came to say, I am sorry," he said quietly. "Not the kind of sorry that hides behind excuses. The real kind." Clara crossed her arms. "Aiden, you should not be here. You have already done enough damage." "I know," he said. "That is why I came to fix it, even if it is only for you." He reached into his coat and unfolded a document, a donation transfer, the entire proceeds from the sale of his penthouse. "The center belongs to you now. No investors, no conditions. Just yours." Clara stared at the papers, speechless. "Why would you do that?" "Because for the first time I wanted to give without expecting anything back," he said. His voice trembled slightly. "You taught me that." The room had gone silent. Volunteers stopped moving, watching quietly. He took a breath. "You do not have to forgive me. I just needed you to know that the man who married you for a bet is gone. And if I ever get another chance, it will not be a contract. It will be real." Clara's eyes glistened, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Aiden smiled sadly and turned to leave. As he stepped out into the snow, the cold wind hit his face, but for the first time, he felt clean, stripped of pride but free. Behind him through the glass, Clara stood motionless, staring after him. Her heart was still bruised, but the sincerity in his voice had cracked something open inside her. For the first time since he had walked away from that bet, Aiden Cole had done something without expecting to win. 1 year later, the city of Chicago woke to the first real spring day after a long gray winter. The air was bright and soft, and the Mitchell Community Center stood proudly at the corner of a once-forgotten street. The front garden was full of color now, tulips, daffodils, and children's laughter. A banner above the entrance read 1 year of hope. Clara stood near the doorway, greeting volunteers and guests as they arrived. Her eyes were lighter these days. The sadness that had once shadowed her face was gone, replaced by quiet strength. She wore a simple white dress and a gold bracelet, engraved with 3 words: "Kindness changes everything." Inside, the hall was filled with people whose lives the center had touched: mothers, veterans, students, and neighbors. Photographs of the early days lined the walls, the building in ruins, the first day of rebuilding, the ribbon cutting. Clara paused to look at one photo in particular, Aiden handing out boxes of food beside her, smiling in the sunlight. It had been taken months ago, the last time he had visited, before quietly stepping away to let her lead. She had not seen him since. As she turned to check the catering table, the doors opened and the room fell into a gentle hush. Aiden Cole walked in wearing a simple navy suit instead of his usual tailored armor. His hair was longer, his expression softer, and there was something humble in the way he looked at her. "Hello, Clara," he said quietly. Her heart gave a small, traitorous skip. "I was wondering if you would show up." "I told you I would keep my promise," he said. "Just needed to earn the right to come back." Clara folded her hands, her voice calm but warm. "You already did that, Aiden. The center would not be standing without you." He shook his head. "No, it stands because of you. You made something good out of what I broke." For a moment they stood there in the soft hum of conversation, surrounded by the life she had rebuilt. Then he reached into his coat pocket and took out a small velvet box. Inside was not a diamond, but a thin silver band, simple and unadorned. "No contracts this time," he said. "No promises written in ink. Just one question." Clara's breath caught. "Aiden." He stepped closer, his voice steady, but full of emotion. "Will you let me try again, not to fix the past, but to build something honest this time?" She stared at him, her heart pounding in the same rhythm it had the first time he had spoken to her in that crowded lounge, but this time it was not fear or disbelief. It was peace. Clara smiled through tears. "You have always been terrible at business deals, Aiden Cole. You give away everything." "Only when it matters," he said softly. Then, before the applause began, before the cameras turned, she nodded and whispered, "Yes." The volunteers cheered quietly, the sound blending with laughter and the rustle of spring air through the open windows. Outside the city moved as it always did, but inside that small corner of Chicago something sacred had been restored. Aiden and Clara stood together, no longer bound by pride or paper, only by choice. The same bet that had once begun as cruelty had turned into something no money could buy: redemption through love. As the sun broke through the clouds, lighting the silver ring on her finger, Aiden smiled and said softly, "The bet is over." Clara looked at him, eyes shining. "No," she replied. "The story just began."